There is a black hen standing on the cobbles outside my byre door, and she is 8 years old. 8. Most of the birds people buy now are finished at 2 and gone at 3. She was out in the snow this February with no lamp, no heat, no light on a timer in the shed, and she laid through it. In her best year, I wrote down 364 eggs against 365 days. I have never had a vet out to a hen. Not once. Not in 22 years on this ground. No lamp in that shed. No lighting on a timer. No tub of electrolyte. No sachet of vitamin. No tonic for the molt. No wormer bought on a hunch because a bird looked at me oddly. She is not a rare bird. That is the part that will annoy you. You can buy her tomorrow from any hatchery in this country for the price of a bag of feed, and most of you will buy the wrong one, and you will never know it, and you will blame the breed. My name is Angus Douglas. I croft the same ground my great-grandfather crofted, above the loch on the west side. 5th generation on it, 240 ewes on the hill, and 11 hens in the yard. The nearest vet is 90 minutes if the road is clear, and it is not clear in February, and that fact has shaped everything I know, because when help is far away, you learn to keep animals that do not need it. I have worked 41 lambings. My hands split every spring at the knuckle, and no cream has ever fixed it. My wife says the black hens all look the same, and she is right, and she still knows which one is which by the way they walk. Here is the part that will annoy you. The hatchery is not selling you a bird. The hatchery is selling you a name. That name was earned about 100 years ago by hens that were tested, counted and bred, from only if the count was good. Every year, the ones that laid best were kept and the rest were not. That is what made the bird. And a name will carry on being printed in a catalogue for a very long time after anybody has stopped doing the work that put it there. I'm not accusing anyone of lying to you. The chick you get is that breed. She has the right feathers and the right comb and the right coloured legs, and if you took her to a show, she would stand up fine. But a big hatchery hatches to a standard of appearance and to volume, because that is what the business is, and nobody in that shed is trap nesting individual hens and writing down what each one laid over 365 days. Why would they? Nobody is paying them to. A hatchery cannot say that to you. A breed society cannot say it either, because their whole purpose is the standard, and the standard is about how a bird looks. I sell no chicks. I have nothing on this at all, so I will say it plainly, and then I will show you what the bird actually did and how to get hold of the real thing, and one thing at the end that has nothing to do with her and that I think matters more. Here is the idea that makes the rest of this make sense, and if you take nothing else, take this. A breed is not a bird. A breed is a decision made again every single year about which hens you breed from. Stop making the decision and the breed does not disappear. It just quietly becomes a colour. The feathers stay black. The laying goes. And because the feathers stay black, nobody notices for 2 generations, and then everybody says the old birds were never that good and it must have been a story. It was not a story. It was written down at the time by people keeping score, and I will give you the numbers in a minute. Now let me say one thing, and then I will not bring it up again. I have put all of it down in a book over at angusdouglaspoultry.com. The breeds, the feeding, the whole year of it. If you want it, it is there, or you can scan the code on the screen. That is all. Now let us get back to the birds. My grandfather knew this without any of the language for it. He kept a notebook in the dresser drawer in the kitchen with a hen's ring number down the left and a stroke for every egg, and he only ever hatched from the top of that page. He called the rest of them passengers. A passenger eats the same as a worker and gives you nothing, and on a croft where the meal came off the boat once a month, a passenger was not a small thing. That notebook is the whole method. Everything the Australians did was that, done bigger. So, the bird is the Australorp. She starts as an English bird. A man named William Cook at Orpington in Kent in the 1880s crossed a few things together and made a big black dual-purpose hen and named her after his village. Good bird. Nothing on this earth to get excited about. Then she went to Australia, and Australian breeders did something to her that nobody in England had bothered doing. They stopped caring what she looked like. They crossed Leghorn into her for laying, Rhode Island red for production, Langshan and Minorca for size and stamina. And then, and this is the part that matters, they kept going. Season after season they kept only the hens that laid the most while eating the least, and they bred from those, and they did it again the next year and the next. Hawkesbury Agricultural College in New South Wales ran one of the first proper laying trials in the world in 1902. Pens of different breeds, same feed, same water, same shelter, counted honestly. The early Australian blackbirds took a good number of the top places, and then in the 1920s, at a trial in Victoria, 6 of these hens laid 1,857 eggs in 365 days. 6 hens. That is better than 300 eggs each in a year, with no electric light, no heated shed, no drug of any kind, because none of those things existed to be given. Just hens on ground, counted. That number stood as a world record, and the poultry world went quiet about it for a while, because nobody had seen anything like it. Now, why did it work? Not magic. 2 things. The first is that she was selected under a hard ration. If you only ever breed from the hen that lays best while eating least, what you build over 30 years is a bird whose body is efficient at turning rough feeding into egg. That trait does not show up in her feathers. You cannot see it. It is only visible in a notebook. The second is that she was never taken off the ground. Every one of those selection decisions was made about a hen who was foraging for part of her own living. So the birds that came through were the ones that were good at foraging, because a hen who will not go and look for a beetle was quietly failing the test every year without anybody writing that down as a category. That is what you are actually buying when you buy a good one, not black feathers. 100 years of somebody else's notebook. And there is a third thing, which is the one the record does not show you at all. She was bred as a dual-purpose bird, which means she was never pushed to the edge. A modern laying hybrid is a bird run at full throttle for 18 months, and the reason she fades is not neglect, it is arithmetic. She is spending her body. The old bird was selected to lay well for years, rather than enormously for one, and a hen who is not being spent does not go down with every small thing that passes through the shed. That is where the hardiness comes from. It is not a separate quality that somebody added. It is what is left over when a bird is not being run flat out. I have hens here in their 7th and 8th year, still laying, not every day, but through the summer, and they hatch and raise their own chicks in the spring without an incubator or a heat plate or anything from me, but a quiet corner. That is the whole of the value, and it does not appear in a single number anywhere. Now I have to correct something, and it is the thing this video is about, so I am not going to slide past it. You will see it said that this bird was banned, that the industry buried her, took her off the catalogues, had her suppressed because she threatened the feed trade. I have seen that said in half a dozen places this year. It is not true, and I'm not going to tell you it is. Nobody banned her. There is no law, no restriction, no directive, nothing. She is in every hatchery catalogue in Britain right now, and she has been the whole time. If you want a black Australorp chick this week, you can have one delivered. And I will tell you honestly, the truth is worse than a ban, because a ban you could fight. What happened is that nobody stopped selling her. They stopped selecting her. The counting stopped. The trap nests came out of the sheds because they are slow and they cost money in labour. And the trade moved to hybrids, where a company does the selecting for you and sells you a pullet that will lay very hard for 18 months and then fall away, which suits a business that would like to sell you another pullet. Nobody had to ban anything. The old bird was left sitting in the catalogue with her name intact, and her insides gradually going ordinary. A ban is a thing somebody does to you. This was a thing that was allowed to happen slowly because nobody was paid to stop it. That is how most knowledge dies. Not seized, just not carried. The second correction, while I am at it. You will read that a pastured egg has twice the omega-3 and 3 times the vitamin E of a shop egg. I have seen those numbers everywhere. They come from a small survey. They vary enormously with what the bird is actually eating, and I would not put my name to the exact figures. What I will say is that the yolk from a hen on grass is a different colour and a different thing in the pan, and you will know it the first time. That much I will stand behind. The precise multiples I will not. Right. How you actually get a good one. First, ask for the number. This is the whole thing and almost nobody does it. When you speak to whoever is selling you birds, ask what the mother laid, not what the breed standard says, not what the website says, what that hen, the actual mother of this chick, laid last year. A breeder who selects for laying will answer you straight away and probably in more detail than you wanted because it is the thing they are proud of. A breeder who does not will tell you about the breed. That answer is your whole answer. It costs you nothing to ask and it sorts the world into two piles in about 4 seconds. Second, expect to pay more and expect to wait. A serious small breeder has a list and a season. You will not be getting birds next Tuesday. That is a good sign, not a bad one. Third, give her ground. She was selected on ground and she does not work properly without it. She wants soil to dig in, grass to pick at, and something living to chase. A run of bare-packed dirt turns her into an ordinary hen who costs you money because you are now buying 100% of what goes into her and you have paid extra for genetics you have made no use of. Fourth, and this is the mistake I made and it cost me 4 years, do not stop when you have got her. Buying the bird is not the method. The method is the notebook. Keep your own record. Hatch only from your best 2 or 3 hens, and in 3 or 4 generations you have birds better than anything you bought, bred on your own ground, suited to your own weather, for nothing. That is what the Australians did. They did not buy a good bird. They made one over decades, and then everybody else stopped. And one boundary, because I will not have anyone hurt an animal on my account. Everything I have said here is about keeping a bird well, so that she does not need help. It is not about withholding help. If a hen is sitting hunched with her tail down and her eyes half closed, or if you put your ear near her and hear a rattle or a click when she breathes, that is not a management question and it is not a breed question. That is a sick bird and it is a vet this week. Respiratory disease moves through a flock. I have not needed a vet in 22 years because I keep hardy birds on open ground, not because I am hard about it. Now I want to tell you the thing that is not in anybody else's version of this, and it is closer to home for me. Everything I've just told you is about an English bird that the Australians perfected. Fine. But we have our own, and ours are in genuine trouble, and almost nobody outside this country has heard of them. The Scots Grey. A tall, barred, slate and white hen, kept in Scotland for hundreds of years. A good layer, a hardy thing that will roost in a tree in weather that would flatten a modern bird. She is on the rare breed list now. There are not many. And the Scots Dumpy, which is the strangest hen you will ever see, because her legs are about 2 inches long, and she goes across a yard like something being pushed. The story on this Crofter, and I cannot prove it, and I am telling you that I cannot prove it, is that the short legs were the point, because a hen who cannot travel far stays near the house, and a hen who stays near the house is not taken by a fox off the hill. Whether that is the real reason or something people said afterwards, I do not know. She's a fine broody, she raises her own chicks, and there are very few of her left. I am not going to pretend the Dumpy will outlay an Australorp. She will not. But there is something crooked about a country where everybody can name an Australian bird, and nobody can name the one that was standing in their own great-grandmother's yard. If you are in Scotland or the north of England, look them up. Somebody has to keep them going, and it will not be a company. Nobody has paid me for any of this. There is no hatchery I'm sending you to, and no breeder giving me birds. I mentioned the book once near the start, and I have not mentioned it since, and I am not going to again. If I were being paid by somebody selling chicks, the last thing I would tell you is to ask them for their laying numbers before you hand over money. Here is why any of it matters. The reason people are told to buy a hybrid pullet every 18 months is not that the hybrid is better, it is that the arrangement is better for the seller. A bird that fades at 2 years is a customer who comes back. A bird that lays for 6 years and hatches her own replacements is a customer you only get once. And it is not only the pullet, it is the bag that goes with her, and the grit, and the tub of tonic for when she fades, and the wormer, and the second bag. Nobody sat in a room and planned that. It assembled itself the way these things do because every part of it made sense to somebody selling one part of it. The result is a person keeping 6 hens in a garden and spending more on them in a year than the eggs would cost at the shop, and quietly concluding they are no good at this. You are not bad at it. You have been sold a system that only works if you keep buying the pieces, and when the counting stops, It is gone, not banned, gone. The genetics in a breed are 100 years of decisions that nobody wrote down anywhere except in the birds themselves, and if 2 generations of keepers hatch from whatever hen happens to be sitting, that work is simply undone. There is no archive. There is no seed bank for a decision. My grandfather's notebook is in the dresser, in my kitchen. Ring numbers down the left, strokes along the right in pencil from the 1950s. That is the only copy there has ever been of what he knew. I am saying this into a machine because there is nobody standing at my gate to hand it to, and I would rather it went to you than went with me. So, your week. Ask whoever sells you birds one question. What did the mother lay? If they answer with the breed instead of a number, walk away. Get your birds onto real ground with soil, grass and something living in it. Start a notebook this week, even with the hens you already have. Ring numbers and strokes. Next spring, hatch from the top 2 names on that page and no others. Tell me in the comments what breed you are keeping and what she actually lays, your own count, not the catalogue number. I want to see the real figures from real yards. I read them all and I answer more than you would think. Next time I'm going to show you how to tell, in about 10 seconds with your hands and nothing else, whether a hen in front of you is laying right now or has been passing as a worker for months. There is a bone you feel for. Every old keeper in this glen could do it, and almost nobody under 50 can. And once you know it, you will never buy a bird at a sale again without doing it first. Keep the good ones. Write it down. Hatch from the top of the page.